Exposing the cursed, sinister rules of a haunted sonar technician, 7 unexplained terrors revealed. Jake Thompson, a sonar technician, had always felt a wrenching connection to the water that bordered Maplewood. He dedicated his life to the depths, diving into the murky void while clinging to his role as protector of his family and their quaint suburban life. But that bond twisted into something sinister as 7 drowning victims surfaced, bodies claimed by the very lake he adored. Each newfound victim only darkened the waters and deepened his fears. With every long shift, something eerie, something unnatural whispered to him through the sonar, teasing at the edge of his mind like an unforgiving tide pulling him down. One evening, beneath a heavy, gray sky, Jake pressed his ear closer to the speaker. The device crackled to life with a morbid melody that slid through the air like ice on skin. Panic shot through him. A shrill voice echoed within his mind, begging him to listen. He yanked the headphones off. What was that? Shadows flicked across his vision, elusive figures darting just beyond the reach of streetlights, as if the lake was alive, pulsating with malevolence. What curse lurked beneath the deceptively calm surface? Friends in Maplewood shared hushed whispers over beers, each theory more twisted than the last. A sinister prophecy, they said, but Jake, their local hero, was supposed to unravel it. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But Jake's heart raced faster. Tom, his neighbor, once a trusted friend, now roamed in darkness. As Jake learned more, secrets began to fester. Rituals disguised as community gatherings hid a web of control and fear. Tom had paranoid eyes, glinting with unhealthy hunger whenever he approached the lake. The pit in Jake's stomach deepened. Had he really been so blind? These roots tangled back in time just like his ancestors, who had made a pact with horrors now risen from the deep. On that dreadful, rainy night, he stared at the lake from his porch. A reflection caught his eye, the water writhed as if alive, the whispers swelling into a crescendo. His pulse thumped like a warning drum. Somewhere in the darkness, something eyes were watching him. He could feel it in the very marrow of his bones. It would take all his courage to peel back the layers of his life, exposing the monsters lurking not just in the water, but in his own neighborhood. The shadows crept closer, and time was running out. With the air turning thick and suffocating, Jake steeled his resolve. The dreadful truths awaited him, twisting together like evil tentacles. Would he confront the specters of the past? Would he lift the veil of deception before he lost everything? As he turned back toward the comfort of his home, the abyss called to him, ready to unleash its hidden terrors. In a town built on secrets, Jake knew one thing for sure: the true monsters may wear familiar faces. And the darkness was only just beginning to stretch its fingers into his life. Jake couldn't shake the chill clinging to his skin as he stepped inside. The room seemed heavier, filled with an oppressive silence that snuffed out all hope. He glanced towards the living room, where his wife Sarah, oblivious to his turmoil, sat engrossed in a book. Her warm smile faded as she noticed his expression. "Jake, what's wrong?" "Nothing," he lied, forcing a grin that felt foreign. The weight of their lives together had shifted, and he knew that secrecy gnawed at their foundation. The shadows in the lake whispered his name, bound him to an unseen terror that threatened to swallow everything he cherished. That night, his dreams were plagued by visions of the lake. The water was black and roiling, crude by tortured faces of the drowned. Jake woke in a panic, drenched in sweat, heart hammering in his chest. He stumbled to the window, peering out into the ink-black night, searching for reassurance in the familiar. But the lake loomed, a gaping maw hungry for nightmares. Morning came, painted in hues of gray, heavy like a death shroud. He knew he had to confront Tom, the man whose eyes had become windows into a dark abyss. But fear twisted in Jake's gut as he stepped towards Tom's house, a few doors down. What horrors lay nestled in the shadows of their neighborhood? He could not ignore the palpable energy pulsating through the air. It felt alive, taunting him, urging him to reach out to uncover the truth. As Jake approached the front porch, the creaking wood sounded like a warning. The door swung open with a ghostly chill. Tom stood there, his face strained, haunted. "Jake, I've been waiting for you." A sinister gleam flickered in his eyes, igniting a spark of dread in Jake's heart. "What do you want from me?" Jake managed, throat dry, words barely escaping. "There are things you don't understand." Tom leaned closer, lowering his voice. "The lake, it needs to be fed." The words dripped with malice, uncoiling tangential truths that echoed in Jake's mind. The victims, they were sacrifices. "You must hear it, what the water sings, it tells only me." Jake stumbled back, the ground shifting beneath him. He'd been a fool, dismissing every warning, every moment that felt off. The web of lies bound him, tightened like a noose around his neck. Tom stepped back, his demeanor shifting, eyes widening as if he'd just perceived something dreadful behind Jake. Without a word, Jake sprinted home, a primal instinct igniting his legs. Panic surged as he glanced at the lake from his window. It pulsed, swirling under a shroud of mist. Something broke through the surface, and Jake's breath caught. A form, indistinct yet terrifying, lingered near the shoreline, beckoning him. Desperate, he rushed to the sonar station in the garage. The device hummed with eerie anticipation. The screen flickered, displaying distorted shapes darting beneath the murky water. Each wave of sound revealed hideous silhouettes of fixed faces, mouths opening in silent screams. He recoiled as a voice cracked through the noisy static, a distorted echo of the drowned. "Join us." Heart racing, Jake slammed the buttons, trying to drown out the nightmarish whispers. But the melody lulled him deeper, wrapping around his consciousness. The lake had entwined him in its sinister embrace, tightening its grip on his sanity. A crashing sound jolted him from his trance. He whipped around to find Sarah standing in the doorway, fear etched across her features. "What is happening, Jake?" He turned back, desperate to shield her from the horrors that loomed. "Sarah, we need to leave. Now." Just as they moved toward the door, the darkness consumed the light, and shadows erupted around them, writhing like serpents. But before he could take a step, an ominous whisper pierced the air, promising revelations Jake never wanted to discover. "You can't escape, not any longer." The very walls seemed to pulse, reverberating with the lake's dreadful song. The grip of terror tightened, and Jake realized they might be too late to flee the malevolence of the past. As the shadows closed in, he knew there was one last desperate choice to make. Would he sacrifice everything to peel back the layers of the curse and face the truth lurking beneath the depths? But first, would anyone survive? Jake felt Sarah's hand grasping his arm, her warmth anchoring him against the encroaching darkness. They stood frozen, caught in the suffocating space where dread clung like smoke. The whispers crescendoed, a chilling chorus promising horrors yet revealed. He squeezed her hand and turned to the pulsating shadows, heart pounding like a drum in his ears. "Listen to me," Jake shouted over the cacophony. "We need to get to the car." Suddenly, the shadows jolted back, retreating as if shaped by some unseen force. It was then Jake noticed a silhouette forming in the mist, the very shape from his nightmare, a figure rising from the lake. It stood there, draped in what appeared to be a shroud made of murky water, half-formed and swaying like a flickering candle. He could see hollow eyes staring back at him, reflecting his own terror. "Jake, what is that?" Sarah's voice trembled, breaking through the noise that he felt ice creeping into his veins. "I don't know." Panic clawed at him, urging him to run, but his feet remained rooted. The figure raised a hand, slowly pointing at him, and the air chilled, whipping through the living room like a sudden storm. Without thinking, Jake propelled himself towards the door. "We have to move. Now." He yanked Sarah, who stumbled after him, still processing the nightmare unfolding around them. Just as they rushed through the door, the shadows surged again, swirling like a vortex, and Jake felt an icy grip wrap around his ankle. He kicked out, adrenaline surging, and ripped free from the tendrils of darkness. They dashed across the yard, hearts pounding, the lake's surface glistening ominously behind them. The car loomed ahead, a beacon of safety. "Get in!" he shouted, fumbling with the keys while Sarah peered back, breaths coming in gasps. "Jake! Look!" Her voice cracked, filled with pure fear. He turned to see the figure hovering at the edge of the water. It seemed larger now, twisted limbs extending towards them. Time stretched as the wretched face twisted into a grotesque smile, a mockery of kindness. "Join us," it called again, the voice a ghastly blend of menacing whispers, beckoning him into the depths. Bile rose in Jake's throat. He forced the key into the ignition, heart racing as the engine roared to life. He fumbled with the gears, hands shaking. "No. We're not going anywhere." The figure lunged forward, suddenly darting across the water, moving with unnatural speed. Jake slammed the gear into reverse and spun the steering wheel. They were escaping, but the night felt alive around them, hunting, waiting. What did Tom mean? Sarah screamed, eyes wide as they sped down the road, the lake receding into the background. "What does it want from us?" Jake clenched his jaw, sweat pouring down his forehead as he navigated the curves. "I don't know. But it's angry. We need to find out why. What's really happening with it all." The headlights sliced through the dark, illuminating the road ahead. But as they drove, a low rumble echoed from the trunk, a deep, thrumming pulse that synced with the sinister rhythm of the lake. Jake's heart dropped. "It's not over," he whispered, dread settling heavy in his chest. Suddenly, the trunk latch began to rattle violently, a haunting laughter bubbling up from within. "Sarah! Get down!" he yelled, slamming on the brakes. Before he knew it, the trunk burst open, and a cascade of shadows spilled out onto the road, an overwhelming tide of darkness. Jake's breath hitched. This was just the beginning. "Where do we go now?" Sarah cried, pressed against the seat, eyes wide with horror. Jake looked to the rearview mirror, where the figure emerged once more, standing at the edge of the lake, arms stretched to the sky as if summoning the very darkness before them. His mouth fell open in disbelief, determination surged once again. "Next time we'll confront it." But as he steered the car away from the lake, a chilling gust of wind slammed into them, rattling the vehicle like a rag doll. What awaited them was still cloaked in mystery and terror, lurking just beyond the shadows of an unquiet lake. Would they find the courage to uncover the truth, or were they already doomed to join the ranks of those who had come before? The road stretched ahead, dark and foreboding, as an eerie voice echoed in their minds. "You can't run from your fate," and Jake knew deep down that the real horror had only just begun. The shadows flowed around them like a living entity, pressing against the car, suffocating in their urgency. Jake gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, heart racing as he fought against the rising tide of panic. "We need to get off this road," he shouted, trying to drown out the echo of the whispers that clung to the air. "What about the shadows?" Sarah's voice shook, her wide eyes scanning the darkness around them. "Just trust me," he snapped, swerving onto a dirt path that veered sharply away from the road. The car bounced violently over old ruts and rocks. Jake felt the tires slip dangerously, the vehicle threatening to tumble back into the clutches of the night. The laughter echoed behind them, coming from the trunk. It rose in pitch, slicing through the tension like a blade. "Jake!" Sarah screamed. "I know," he barked, desperation fueling his every move. Thoughts raced through his mind. Tom's warning, the figure's sinister smile. What connection did it have to them? The weight of dread pressed harder as he pushed the car faster, the thrum of the engine mingling with the haunting chant that whispered through the trees surrounding them. Suddenly, the headlights caught something on the side of the path. Jake furrowed his brow, squinting through the haze. Shadows danced in the beams, flickering in and out like errant ghosts. And then he saw it, a small dilapidated cabin, partially hidden by creeping vines and decay. His gut twisted. The last thing he wanted was to stop, but they couldn't keep driving endlessly like this. If they didn't get away from the road, it felt like the shadows would swallow them whole. With a sharp intake of breath, he made a decision. "Sarah, hold on." He jerked the wheel, the car skidding to a halt just outside the cabin. "What are you doing?" she yelled, but Jake was already unbuckling his seatbelt, his mind racing with possibilities. "Maybe we can find something inside, anything to help." He scrambled out of the car, barely registering the sharp cold biting at his skin. Sarah hesitated, eyes darting from the cabin to the lurking shadows behind them. "Jake, it's not safe. We shouldn't stay in the car. Lock the doors," he ordered, moving before she could argue further. The cabin loomed over him, an eerie structure filled with secrets and dread. He reached for the door, and it creaked open, the sound like a dying breath. A sharp smell of mildew hit him, mingled with something sweeter and rancid. As he stepped inside, the gloom wrapped around him like a shroud. The beam from his flashlight flickered, revealing scraps of yellowed paper scattered across the floor. He moved deeper into the darkness, heart drumming a frantic rhythm. The whispers through the trees now sounded like a chorus twisted beyond recognition. Jake called his name, and he froze, breath hitching. He turned back, ready to rush outside, when something caught his eye in the corner, an old radio, cracked and dusty. His heart raced as he approached, instinct telling him it held secrets. He flipped the switch, and it crackled to life, sputtering static before settling into a low hum. "Look at the echoes join the lost," a voice distorted beyond recognition demanded, sending chills down his spine, each word dancing through the air like a taunt. "The lake's thirst has no end. Jake." Sarah's voice broke through the haze, high and panicked. "Coming!" he yelled, but the radio's grip held him. The shadows outside shifted restlessly, a dark storm brewing. Suddenly, without warning, a loud crash echoed. The car rocked on its tires, and he stumbled backward, pulse pounding in his ears. "Sarah!" he screamed, racing toward the door, fear propelling him forward. The shadows had come for them, and as he burst out of the cabin, a harsh laugh enveloped him, a chilling reminder that they weren't safe yet. As he rounded the vehicle, he froze, breath caught in his throat. The trunk lay wide open, and from the depths of the darkness, a figure began to emerge, unmistakable, ethereal. Hollow eyes fixed on him, the sinister smile spreading wider. "Join us," it whispered in a voice like gravel on stone. Jake's heart plummeted. No more running. No more escape. They were already in too deep, and he knew with dreadful certainty that their next decision would seal their fates. The question loomed, heavy in the air: would they confront their nightmares, or would they become just another echo in the shadows? As the figure advanced, Jake's mind raced. How could they fight something so insidious, so entwined with their very being? Jake's breath quickened as the figure's hollow eyes locked onto his. The laughter that had haunted him before surged again, an uncontrollable ripple of sound that reverberated through his bones. It was too late to think. He had to act. "Sarah!" he shouted, voice hoarse. He darted back toward the car, adrenaline surging through him. "Get out! We need to go." But she didn't move. Her gaze was fixed on the figure, drawn in like a moth to a flame. "Jake, it's so beautiful," she whispered, her voice trailing off like smoke in the wind. "Snap out of it." He grabbed her arm, shaking her. Her skin felt cold, almost as if the life within was being drained away. Panic clawed at him. The figure took another step forward, a smirk stretching its face wider than possible. "You seek to run. The echoes cling to your souls. You'll never escape." Its voice was razor thin and layered, cutting through the air like ice. Jake pulled Sarah with all his strength, trying to wade through the creeping dread that clung to them. But he could feel the pull of the shadows crawling at their feet, curling like smoke, hungry to ensnare them in their grasp. "Jake!" Sarah cried, finally breaking free from the spell as horror crossed her features. "What do we do?" "Get in. Now." he yelled, shoving her towards the passenger side. He could feel the press of the darkness drawing closer, the whispers spiraling into a cacophony of madness. As they both scrambled inside, he slammed the door and locked it. The sound felt weak against the terror outside. He turned the key in the ignition, the engine wheezing in protest. "Come on, come on," he urged, but it sputtered, refusing to cooperate. The shadows swarmed near, pooling around the car like a dark tide. He could barely see the ground outside, just shifting blackness. Sarah's voice trembled. "What do we do?" Before he could answer, the figure loomed nearer, its ghastly features illuminated now by the fading glow of the headlights. "To break free, you must embrace your darkness." Its breath billowed, mist-like, against the window, distorting its reflection, suffocating the space between them. "It's trying to get into our heads," Jake rasped. "It wants to make us one of them." The radio screeched again to life, the static turning frantic and wild as a new voice sliced through. "You shouldn't be here. Leave while you can." The words felt like an electric shock, searing into Jake's soul. "Jake!" Sarah screamed, pointing out the window. He turned, heart-stopping. More shadows were gathering, shifting in and out of shape like liquid night, pressing against the windows, stretching fingers through every pore of the car. "It's a trap!" Jake shouted over the static, thumping the steering wheel with frustration. "We have to find a way out of here." The engine finally coughed back to life, a sputter mingling with the thunderous whispers outside. Jake slammed the gear into reverse. As he stepped on the gas, the tires screeched against the gravel, the car lurching backward. "Hold on." But the shadows rushed in like wild beasts, and the laughter grew louder as the figure grinned, revealing teeth too sharp to be human. "You will be lost to us," it called out as they tore down the path. Jake fought the urge to look back. The air felt thick and heavy with despair. "What's the plan?" he yelled to Sarah, who was clutching onto the dashboard, eyes wide with terror. "Find a way to break the spell," she shouted. The radio said something to lake the echoes. He knew he didn't have much time. The darkness barely contained outside, pulsing as the shadows clawed hungrily at the car. How?" he panted, racing through his options. "Go back to the cabin," she said suddenly. "We need to find something there, whatever is keeping them here." His heart raced in rhythm with the snarl of the engine. "Are you crazy? Do you have another choice?" The figure loomed closer through the rearview mirror, shadows oozing around it, mocking his despair. The haunting laughter rang in his ears as the voices grew louder, merging into a twisted melody. Jake clenched his jaw, and with a jolt of determination, he turned the steering wheel, the tires kicking up gravel as they veered back toward the cabin. As they approached, everything felt wrong. The air was charged, thick with fear. But deep down, he understood the lake's terrible thirst wasn't just a clue. It held the key to their survival or their doom. As he hit the brakes, the world around them fell silent, the shadows momentarily receding. But with that silence came a weight, an impending dread that smirked at him from the edges. Now, standing at the intersection of hope and horror, Jake sensed something shift within the cabin, the whispers promising deeper, darker secrets. Would they find salvation or seal their fate? The shadows waited, eager for their next move. The car jerked to a halt, tires scraping the gravel as Jake squinted into the eerie darkness encircling the cabin. "Stay close," he whispered, his voice trembling, steeling himself against the encroaching shadows that seemed to breathe as they hovered around the vehicle. Sarah nodded, her eyes darting anxiously around, watching the darkness ripple like a living thing. "What do we look for?" she asked, voice low, barely more than a breath. Anything that can help us understand what is happening here," he said, already stepping out into the chill, icy air. The moment he opened his door, the hollow laughter erupted anew, echoing like a lingering curse. The cabin loomed before them, a dark silhouette against the pale moonlight. "It's just a building," Jake assured himself, though doubt clawed at his mind. The radio's warning replayed in his head, haunting and insistent. You shouldn't be here. As they made their way to the door, the shadows seemed to pulse with life, flickering like a flame ready to extinguish. Each step felt heavier, pulling him down into an abyss filled with dread. He forced the door open, its creaking hinges sounding like the groans of the damned. Inside, the cabin was drenched in darkness. The air was stale, metallic and laced with something acrid fear. The scent twisted around him, an invisible hand squeezing tighter, hinting at secrets long buried in this forsaken place. Jake. Sarah's voice quivered, breaking through the oppressive silence. We shouldn't have come back. Just stay with me, he replied, trying to sound braver than he felt. They moved further inside, guided by the fading glimmers of moonlight creeping through grimy windows. His heart raced as they navigated through the cramped living room, cluttered with broken furniture, remnants of a life abandoned. Dust motes floated like spirits, kissing the air as he advanced. He reached the wooden bookshelf, fingers running across the warped spines of old, neglected books. Then he noticed something on the dusty floor, a glint of silver. Bending down, Jake picked up a small silver locket, its surface cool and smooth. He opened it. Inside was a faded photograph of a family, 2 parents and a boy, their faces smiling into the void. But as he stared deeper, the boy's eyes shifted, dark holes swallowing all life. Breath caught in his throat. Jake! Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible, but he could hear the urgency behind it. Look! He turned. She stood, pointing at a wooden table cluttered with papers and an old lantern. What are those? Jake moved closer, scanning the yellowed pages scattered across the surface. Scrawled notes filled every inch with words he barely understood, echoes the lake, the call, surrender whispers. Panic surged, roiling in his stomach. The lake, Sarah breathed. What if it's not just a place? A sound, a soft, sad humming floated through the cabin, wrapping around them like a ghostly embrace. Do you hear that? Jake's heartbeat quickened. The shadows flickered again, contorting in a way that felt almost alive. He started to edge towards the door, instinctual dread pulling at him, and then it was as if the cabin itself sighed. The walls creaked, and the air thickened with a dark energy that pressed against their skin. The echoes of the laughter buzzed in his ears, and the figure outside loomed back to mind, its grin a gaping maw. Jake, I don't want to be here, Sarah whimpered, holding her arms tight around herself. Something shifted in the corner of his eye, a movement in the shadows. He turned quickly, but there was nothing, just more darkness pressing closer. The locket dropped from his fingers, clattering to the ground as he felt an overwhelming urge to flee, to escape this haunted space. Let us get out. He shouted, grabbing Sarah's arm. But just as quickly, the shadows thickened, swirling against the walls, pulling toward them like an impending storm. Jake, wait. Her voice sliced through his resolve. What does the locket mean? We can't leave without understanding. We can't. And then the floor trembled beneath them, rattling as the cabin sighed. Once more a shuddering groan that shook the very foundation of their existence. Understand what? He stammered, eyes darting around. But before Sarah could respond, a cold gust swept through the cabin, extinguishing what little light they had. The shadows screeched, and Jake could feel them rushing over him, whispering terrible secrets. You will come to us, echoed through his mind, clawing at his sanity. As his grip on reality began to fray, he realized somewhere deep within this darkness wanted something more than their fear. It craved their very souls. With horror dawning on him, the walls began to pulse, the echoes rising into a crescendo. In the lake, Jake, he heard her say, completely lost in the chaos. The truth is in the lake. But as Jake opened his mouth to scream, the whispers swallowed his voice whole, plunging them into an abyss so deep and dark it threatened to consume them. What awaited at the lake tonight? The darkness hungered, and they were already losing the fight. The darkness pressed around them like a vice, squeezing the breath from Jake's lungs. The whispers turned to howls, swirling with a chilling frenzy, a cacophony of lost souls pleading for release. Jake, we have to go. Sarah cried, terror etched into every feature of her face, but he couldn't move. It felt like the shadows were tugging at his limbs, rooting him to the spot. A distant memory flickered, a child's laughter echoing in the wind. The lake, the words drilled into his mind, taunting him. Why did it feel so familiar? Jake! Sarah's scream jolted him, breaking the trance. He turned, and in a moment of clarity, he saw an opening just beyond a wall of twisting darkness. Run! He shouted, grabbing her hand and bolting toward it. The shadows whipped around them, cold tendrils wrapping around their ankles, pulling them back. Each desperate step felt like wading through molasses, thick and suffocating. As they raced for the door, an eerie silence fell, a chilling void where even the whispers seemed to retreat. They burst through the threshold, slamming into the night. The air was sharp and sweet, a contrast to the stench of decay inside. They stumbled onto the porch, hearts pounding, breaths coming in ragged gasps. The cabin behind them loomed, a monstrous silhouette against the moon, silent now but threatening. Did you hear that? Jake whispered, the adrenaline still coursing through him. He turned to Sarah, searching her face for answers. But she just stared back, eyes wide with fear. Where do we go? She whispered, fingertips trembling against his arm. The woods around them felt alive, shadows dancing between the trees, but he knew one thing: the lake was their only hope. Follow me, he said, determination taking hold. They sprinted from the cabin, the forest reclaiming them, branches scratching at their skin as they navigated through the underbrush. Moonlight filtered through the leaves, guiding their way to the truth hidden in the lake. Jake! Sarah gasped, halting abruptly. He turned to see the color drain from her face. What if the lake is the source? The thought hung heavily in the air, as oppressive as the darkness behind them. He hesitated, the weight of his own thoughts settling in. We don't have a choice. We need to know. But dread gnawed at him. What if she was right? As they reached the shore, the water lay still, a black mirror reflecting the stars above. It lapped gently against the rocks, but Jake felt it pulling, like a living entity eager to share its secrets. He cast a wary glance at Sarah, who stood at the water's edge, uncertainty lining her features. Do you really think it will show us what happened? She asked, voice wavering. We have to try. He stepped forward, the icy water creeping over his shoes. The shock jolted him back to reality, where all that loomed was the unknown. Just focus on the locket, he urged, reaching into his pocket where the silver trinket lay. Those hollow eyes from the picture haunted him. The air became thick, charged with energy, and the wind howled like a banshee. A low rumble echoed from the lake, reverberating through the ground beneath their feet. The water began to shift, swirling, rising as if summoning something from its depths. Jake! What is happening? Sarah shrieked, backing away. Panic seeped into her voice that he opened his mouth to respond, but before words could form, a figure emerged from the water, translucent and glimmering. A child, no, the boy from the photograph, his face twisted in an expression of something akin to sorrow or fury. You shouldn't be here, he croaked, voice echoing with a thunderous finality. The darkness seemed to surge around them again, the shadow stretching, readying to reclaim its prey. Jake realized too late that the boy wasn't just a spirit, he was a guardian, a warning. Jake, we need to go. Sarah screamed, panic-stricken. Now. But before they could move, the shadows lunged toward them, snatching at their ankles. A deep, resonant voice broke the night air, drowning out the boy's call. You have disturbed the peace of the lake. Prices must be paid in. That moment, the shadows closed in, suffocating, and Jake grasped Sarah's hand tighter. Whatever happens, don't let go. He shouted as the darkness swallowed them whole. What would they discover as they battled the forces that lurked within the lake? The answer waited, lurking just beyond the veil. The darkness engulfed them, a suffocating blanket that squeezed the air from their lungs. Jake clung to Sarah, their fingers intertwined as they spiraled deeper into the void. The weight of shadows pressed against his chest, each heartbeat a frantic drum in a silent symphony of terror. He felt their coldness, a creeping frost creeping into his bones, whispering dreadful promissories of what lay ahead. Suddenly, they were jolted apart as if an unseen force snatched Sarah from his grasp. "Jake!" she cried, her voice a mere echo against the suffocating silence. A pulsing glow flickered in the murk, illuminating Sarah's horrified face, eyes wide with disbelief. "Stay close!" he shouted, lunging toward her. His vision blurred, the shadows responded, crawling hands that reached up from the ground, damp and clammy, wrapping around his ankles, dragging him down into the dark. "Help!" she screamed, but as quickly as the glow appeared, it flickered out. Jake fought against the icy hands, breaking free just enough to reach for Sarah. "Hold on!" The shadows shrieked and twisted around them, each wail like a dagger carving into his sanity. In the chaos, Jake caught sight of the spectral boy, hovering in the darkness, his hollow eyes pleading for salvation. "You shouldn't have come." The child's voice echoed with a haunting cadence that sent shivers racing down his spine. "It's the lake." But before Jake could form a plan, the boy vanished, swallowed by the encroaching shadow. "Keep moving!" Jake yelled, pulling Sarah along, a desperate tug against the grip of despair. They stumbled forward, merging into the inky blackness until they were submerged in an oppressive darkness where nothing felt real. Shapes morphed around them, twisted figures darting at the edges of their vision. "Are you okay?" he panted, scanning her face, his heart racing wildly. "No," she sobbed, trembling. "We're trapped. Just remember the locket. It has to mean something," he urged, the cold echoes suffocating his breath. With that, they found themselves back at the edge of the lake, the spectral shimmer beckoning like a siren. "Jake, it's pulling me," Sarah's voice wavered, her body swaying slightly. "Don't let it take you," he barked, the visions of the dead child clawing at his mind. "We need to fight it." Suddenly, the water surged, roaring to life as if recognizing their fear. A peak of pale foam bubbled up, reaching toward them like a dark hand. The boy's face flickered beneath the surface, a look of agony twisting his features. It wasn't just the lake, it was a prison, and he could see it now. The lake trembled, waves spiraling backwards, revealing skeletal arms dragging down relics and forgotten remnants. The ghostly face twisted again, and for a moment, empathy flickered within Jake. The child was just like them, lost, trapped. "Jake. It wants our souls," Sarah screamed, eyes wide with panic as she clawed back from the water's edge. "No," he shouted, resolve hardening in his chest. "We'll break this curse. We just need to." But before he could finish, the water surged again, and Jake felt an unrelenting pull. What manifested on the surface wasn't just water, it was a trap, crafted from whispers and sorrow, each ripple echoing another lost soul. "Sarah, jump!" he shouted, not knowing where the cry would lead them but knowing they needed to escape the grip of death that threatened to ensnare them. With a deafening roar, the shadows rose around them, closing in, hungry for their fear. Jake grasped the locket tightly, channeling all his will into the piece of silver. "Let us go!" he bellowed, feeling the power surge through him. A blinding flash erupted, illuminating the darkness, and both he and Sarah were suspended in a brilliant light, fighting to stay together. Then, in an instant, the world shifted. A bone-chilling laughter echoed, mocking them. "You think you can escape what was never meant to be escaped?" Just as suddenly, the light flickered, and the ground beneath them began to give way. As the darkness threatened to reclaim them, Jake's heart raced. "Hold on tight." But in that instant of utter chaos, the locket slipped from his grasp, plunging into the waiting depths of the lake. The shadows howled a triumphant cry, and as the last vestiges of light flickered away, Jake realized they had awoken something far worse. What had they unleashed, and could they withstand the forces hidden within the darkness? The answer loomed, insatiably dark and wicked, waiting for them to confront their most fearsome nightmare. The moment Jake hit the water, coldness enveloped him, not just around his body but within his soul. It was deeper than fear, it was despair, pressing heavily against his chest, suffocating what little hope remained. He gasped, bubbles escaping his lips, and he felt himself being pulled down, the water clawing at him like 1,000 icy fingers. Instincts kicked in. He fought against the pull, battling currents that shifted aggressively, twisting him in every direction. Above him, the surface shimmered like glass, a fleeting glimpse of light that seemed to call out for him, promising safety, while below, shadows gathered imprisoning, suffocating. "Sarah!" he shouted, though the word came out as a desperate whisper in the watery abyss. The lake consumed it, absorbing his panic, swallowing it in silence. Just as despair began to claw up his throat, he saw her, a flicker of movement swirling among the darkness like a comet in a dying star. Her eyes sparkled with terror, and the moment they locked onto each other, the lake trembled as if realizing their connection. "I'm coming!" he screamed, but the shadows tugged harder, fierce and relentless. Through gritted teeth, he reached out, stretching his fingers toward hers, longing for the warmth of her touch. But the darkness closed in tighter, churning like a beast awakened, seeking to claim its prey. Jake's body felt heavy, weighted by fear, and he was sinking. In that darkness, fleeting images assaulted his mind: the spectral boy, the wailing memories of the lake, echoes of laughter twisted with pain. "You can't escape!" screamed thoughts, drowning out anything resembling clarity. But then, in the depths of panic, he remembered the locket, the silver glimmer that had brought them to the lake. Its power faded now, lost in the unfathomable depths. Desperation surged through him. "Fight it!" he yelled, silently waging war against the shadows. He pushed against the water, his heart racing, will igniting like fire in his chest. Suddenly, from the corner of his eye, a spark. Sarah. Exerting all her strength, she was fighting back, scattering dark tendrils that sought to consume them. The bonds of shadows wavered, allowing them to inch closer. "Take my hand!" Jake gasped, adrenaline fueling every word. Sarah locked eyes with him, determination flashing in her gaze. Then she lunged, fingers extending. The moment they connected, a surge of energy pulsed through them, igniting warmth against the cold, a fragile thread bridging hope and horror. But the lake roared in descent, and the atmosphere crackled as if the fabric of the world was about to tear. The water surged violently, a wall of darkness reared, crashing toward them, intent on separating their fragile bond. "We won't let go!" they shouted together, voices intertwining, defying the abyss. As the darkness climbed higher, the grip on Jake's arm wavered, pulling at Sarah's strength. Shadows screeched, cries of anguish filling the void, and a rush of bitter cold threatened to rip them apart. "Together!" Jake shouted, feeling the weight of their union pressing against the rage of the water. With one furious heave, they surged upward, breaking through the surface, gasping for breath as moonlight flickered above them, shining through a momentary tear in the veil. But freedom was short-lived. A wave of darkness crashed hard, dragging them back beneath the suffocating depths. And then, as the shadows pulled tighter, Jake's thoughts flared with panic. What if the locket was the key? What if it held the power to banish the darkness? In that moment, time fractured. He felt something brush against his leg, a flicker of recognition, an awakening of dread. They weren't alone, something else lurked in the water, waiting, hunting. "It's here," Jake whispered, terror crawling down his spine. And as chills spread across his skin, instinctively he knew this nightmare was only beginning. The darkness was alive. It wanted them. And it would do whatever it took to claim its prize. His heart raced as realization sank in. What other horrors awaited them beneath the sunlit waves? Jake's lungs burned, the icy grip of the water tightening around him. His heart raced as he fought against the pull, determination igniting within him like a flickering candle in the depths of despair. He could barely see Sarah nearby, struggling against the same dark tendrils that sought to drag them down to the abyss. "Hold on, Sarah!" he shouted, his voice barely escaping the choking water. The shadows writhed, taunting him as they coiled around their legs, knowing their fears. But through the chaos, Jake felt something shift, a flicker of recognition in Sarah's eyes, a spark of hope amidst the terror. "Grab my hand," he urged, stretching his arm painfully through the water. The connection was electric as their fingers intertwined. An undeniable power coursed through them, a shield against the encroaching darkness. Time seemed to pause as they fought to stay anchored to each other, the shadows pulsing like a living heartbeat, desperate to snuff out their light. "Together!" Sarah yelled, her voice breaking through the spectral howls surrounding them. They pushed upward, the warmth of their shared resolve igniting a light within the depths. The water churned violently around them, screams echoed, the very essence of the lake quaking at their defiance. "Now!" Jake bellowed. With a furious surge, they broke through the surface, gasping for breath as the moonlight streamed down, illuminating their path. The night felt lighter, but the shadows below roared in retaliation, a tidal wave of darkness crashing toward them. "We need to leave, now!" Jake shouted, dragging Sarah toward the shore. But as they flailed through the water, he caught sight of that haunting figure, the boy from the photograph. He rose from the depths, skeletal arms outstretched, longing and sorrow painted across his hollow face. "Jake! Don't look!" Sarah cried, but the boy's gaze held Jake captive. "You're the key," his voice whispered, echoing within Jake's mind, mingling with shame and urgency. "End the curse before it's too late. Let go of me!" Sarah yelled, panic gripping her as shadows clawed at her feet again. "We're running out of time." Taking a breath, Jake submerged his hand into his pocket, fingers curling around the locket. "It's not just a trinket," he yelled, igniting a spark of clarity. "It can break the bond." The shadows contorted, writhing as if they understood the stakes, as if their grasp weakened at the mere mention of the locket. "Don't let the darkness take you," the boy implored, his face twisting into a grimace of agony. "Sarah, we have to use it," Jake shouted over the rising tide of despair. He could feel the shadows tightening, their cold breath wrapping around him like fog. With resolve burning in his chest, he opened the locket, its silver surface shimmering even in the depths. A blinding light burst forth, bright and pure, engulfing them in warmth. "Embrace the truth," the boy urged, his form shimmering against the light. Jake pressed the locket toward the encroaching shadows, the light extending like a beacon, washing over the darkness. The shadows shrieked and writhed, their faces contorting in fear as the light pushed them back. "You will not take them," Jake shouted, channeling all his will, all his love for Sarah into that small piece of silver. Together, they surged forward, the light intensifying until it erupted, cascading through the water like 1,000 suns. The cries of the damned mingled with the laughter of spirits released. As they emerged from the depths, the lake roared in fury, but the phantoms began to fade, dissolving into mist. The boy's gaze softened, peace washing over him as he faded away. "Let us go. We did it." Sarah's voice broke into a victorious shout as they stumbled onto the shore, soaked but free from the lake's cursed grasp. Breathless and trembling, they fell into each other's arms. The weight of darkness finally lifted, revealing the moon's soft glow above. The air felt clearer, the dread that once surrounded them dissipating like fog at dawn. "Did we really escape?" Sarah asked, her voice shaky with disbelief. Jake met her gaze, feeling the warmth of hope through their entwined fingers. "We did. It's finally over." A deep sigh escaped him, the heaviness in his chest melting away. But as they turned to leave, heedless whispers lingered in the air. "You cannot forget we won." Jake called back, a new strength igniting within them. They faced their fears, drenched in the darkness, and emerged on the other side. The curse had been broken, and Maplewood could finally breathe free. With the lake's secrets laid bare and the moon guiding their way, they walked toward the horizon, a path leading away from shadows and into the light, hand in hand, ready to reclaim their lives. This is it. You need to subscribe now so that you don't miss the next exclusive story. Smash that like button right now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes all the difference. Let us flood the comments section with your biggest reactions and theories. What do you think happens next? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your love keeps us going strong.